While I mourned Grandma, Mother emptied my education savings for stepbrother. Now I've evicted them from the inherited house, and their response was shocking. Be me, 29-year-old Thomas. Remember the exact moment I realized I no longer mattered in my own family. It was a chilly autumn evening, the wind howling through the trees, rattling the windows like some ominous warning. Washing dishes in the kitchen after dinner. My mother Catherine standing by the counter, scrolling through her phone, smiling at something on the screen. Stepbrother Noah sitting at the dining table, casually twirling a pen between his fingers. Mother's new husband Gregory, leaning back in his chair, swirling a glass of bourbon like he belonged here more than me. Gregory's deep voice cuts through the quiet. So Noah, he says, have you thought about where you want to go for college? Noah grins and sets his pen down, still deciding, Harvard or maybe Princeton? But you know it's all about the funding, right? My mother's face lights up instantly. Sweetheart, we'll make sure you go wherever you want. Don't even worry about that. I stop scrubbing the plate in my hand, stomach twisting. Something about the way she said it. It doesn't sit right. Gregory clears his throat. Actually, Catherine and I were just talking about that. My mother puts her phone down, turns to me, her expression unreadable. Thomas, we need to talk. Here it is. That sinking feeling I'd learned to ignore for years. Rears its ugly head. I dry my hands on a towel, force my voice to stay calm. What's up? She hesitates. It's about your college fund. Sharp chill runs through me. My father's college fund, the one he set aside for me before he passed away. The only thing he left behind that was truly mine. What about it? I ask. Fingers tightening around the towel. Gregory exhales like he's the one burdened by this conversation. Well, it's just sitting there, Thomas. And Noah, well, he has such a bright future ahead of him. We thought it would make sense to put it to good use. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. But apparently only I notice it. I let out a dry laugh. You're joking, right? Noah shifts uncomfortably but says nothing. My mother folds her arms. Thomas, don't be dramatic. You're already in college. You're doing fine. Noah needs this more than you do. I need it. It's mine. My voice shaking now. Anger rising faster than I can control. Dad left that money for me. Not for Noah, not for anyone else. My mother's lips press into a thin line. And I'm telling you, it's not just about you, Thomas. We're a family. We help each other. Gregory takes a slow sip of his bourbon, watching me like I'm some unruly child throwing a tantrum. Look, son, I'm not your son, I snap, hands curling into fists. And you have no right to touch my father's money. Gregory lets out a low chuckle, shaking his head. You've got quite an attitude, kid. My mother sighs heavily, rubbing her temples. Thomas, you don't need to make this harder than it has to be. Oh, I think you've done a pretty good job of that already. Noah finally speaks up, his voice careful, measured. Look, man, if it's that big of a deal to you, I don't need the money, but... My mother shoots him a glare so sharp he immediately shuts his mouth. And that's when I know. This isn't just Gregory's idea. This is hers, my own mother, willing to steal from me for the sake of her new perfect family. I feel something break inside me. I straighten my back, my voice calm but firm. You're not taking my money. Gregory scoffs. And what are you going to do about it? I look at my mother, searching her face for something. Remorse, guilt, hesitation. Anything that would tell me she knows this is wrong. But she just stares back at me, unblinking. And that's my answer. I swallow hard and step away from the counter, jaw clenched so tight it aches. You know what? Take it. My mother's expression softens slightly, as if she thinks I'm giving in. I shake my head. Take it, but don't expect to see me again. And with that, I walk out of the kitchen, leaving behind the family that had already left me long ago. I don't go back to my room that night. Walk straight out of the house, my breath forming white clouds in the cold night air, hands clenched into fists, heart pounding in my chest. I have nowhere to go, but anywhere is better than staying in that house. End up at my best friend Matt's apartment. He doesn't ask questions when he opens the door, just takes one look at my face and steps aside. Dude, what happened? He finally asks. After I sink onto his couch, I let out a humorless laugh. They're stealing my college fund. Giving it to Noah. Matt's jaw tightens. You're kidding. I shake my head. Nope. Apparently he has a bright future and I don't need it. Wow, Matt mutters, running a hand through his hair. Your mom. I mean, I knew she was messed up. But this is next level betrayal. I don't say anything. Just sit there staring at the floor, feeling the weight of it all sink in. So what are you going to do? Matt finally asks. I sigh. I don't know, man. I told them if they take it, they'll never see me again. Matt scoffs. Yeah, and do you think they care? That's the worst part. I'm not sure. I don't go home that night, or the night after. My mother doesn't call, neither does Gregory. The only message I get is from Noah. Noah. Hey, I didn't ask for this. Just wanted you to know that. Me. Then don't take it. He never responds. A week passes. I crash on Matt's couch. Go to my classes like normal. Try to pretend my world hasn't just collapsed, but I can't stop thinking about it. And then out of nowhere, my grandmother dies. I find out through a brief text from my mother. Catherine, your grandmother passed away this morning. The funeral is on Saturday. That's it? No, are you okay? No, I know you were close to her. Nothing. Just a cold, clinical statement. I stare at my phone, stomach churning. My grandmother was the only person in my family who truly cared about me. She had been the one to comfort me when my father died, the one who still sent me birthday cards, the one who saw through my mother's lies and manipulation, and now she's gone. I know I have to go to the funeral, not for my mother, not for Gregory or Noah, but for her. The day of the funeral is gray and bitterly cold, the sky overcast, the wind sharp against my face. I stand at the back of the church, watching as my mother plays the grieving daughter, dabbing at her dry eyes with a tissue. Gregory stands beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Noah is there too, looking uncomfortable in his suit. I keep my distance. When the service ends, we walk outside to the cemetery. I keep my hands shoved into my coat pockets, jaw clenched. I'm not sure if I'll say anything to my mother, but then I hear her talking. I just think it makes sense, she's saying, in a low voice to Gregory. The house is too big to sit empty. We should move in. I stop in my tracks. She's talking about my grandmother's house. She hasn't even been buried yet, and my mother is already planning to take everything she owned. A bitter taste fills my mouth. I turn and walk away. Before I can say something I'll regret, but I know one thing for certain. If my mother thinks she's going to take what doesn't belong to her again, she's in for a surprise. I don't go home after the funeral. Can't. But I don't have to wait long before my mother finds me. She calls the next day. Not to ask how I am. Not to talk about Grandma. Straight to business. Thomas, she says, her voice carefully controlled. We need to discuss the house. I let out a dry laugh, gripping my phone tighter. The house? You mean Grandma's house? The one she hasn't even been gone a full week for? Don't be dramatic, she snaps. You knew this was coming? It makes no sense for the house to sit empty when we could. We? I cut in. Who's we? She hesitates for a split second. Gregory, Noah, and I were planning to move in there. It's the final insult. I clench my jaw. You don't own that house? There's a pause. Then she sighs as if I'm the unreasonable one. Thomas, we can work something out. It's too much for you to handle on your own? You mean it's too much for you to accept that it's not yours to take? Her voice hardens. Thomas, don't start this. Grandma would want family to live in that house. Not let it go to waste. I almost laugh. Yeah, then it's a good thing she left it to me. Silence. A long, stunned silence. What? I take a slow breath, savoring the moment. Grandma left the house to me. Her voice drops to a deadly whisper. You're lying. Am I? I say, enjoying how her confidence cracks, because I already met with the lawyer this morning. The will is clear. The house is mine. And then she loses it. You ungrateful child, she spits, her mask completely slipping. After everything we've done for you? I laugh. Everything you've done for me? Like trying to steal my college fund? Like treating me like I don't exist? No, Mom, this time you don't get to take what's mine. Her breathing is sharp, furious. You can't do this? You wouldn't dare kick us out. I grin. Who said anything about kicking you out? I pause, letting the suspense build. You can stay if you pay rent. The sound of her furious breathing fills the line. You wouldn't. Try me. Then, for the first time in years, I'm the one to hang up on her. And it feels really good. I don't hear from her for 2 days. But I know it isn't over. Not by a long shot. On the third day, I get a call from an unknown number. I don't answer. Then another, and another. Finally, my phone buzzes with a text. Catherine, we need to talk. This isn't right, Thomas. Call me back. I ignore it. An hour later, a voicemail. Thomas, you're being childish. We're your family. You can't just abandon us like this. Call me back. I delete it. Then just as I'm getting comfortable, my phone rings again. This time it's Noah. I stare at the screen for a moment before answering. What do you want? He sighs. Look, man, I didn't ask for any of this. I just don't want things to get worse. I almost laugh. Worse? You think things can get worse? Noah hesitates. I know Mom screwed up, okay? And Gregory, I know he's an ass. But this whole rent thing, You don't really mean it. I lean back, gripping the phone tighter. Oh, I mean it. Noah lets out a slow breath. Come on, Thomas, you're not like this. You don't have to prove a point. I'm not proving a point, I say coldly. I'm setting boundaries, something none of you ever respected. There's a long pause. Then Noah's voice drops. You know she's not going to let this go, right? I close my eyes. I know. And I'm ready for it. I know it isn't over. My mother never backs down when she wants something. And now she wants the house. The next day I'm at work when my phone buzzes again. This time it isn't her. It's an unknown number. I ignore it. Then another call. And another. By the fifth one I pick up. Thomas Carter. The voice is sharp, professional. I frown. Who's asking? My name is Paul Wilson. I'm an attorney representing your mother and Gregory Turner. They would like to arrange a discussion regarding your grandmother's estate. I almost laugh. A discussion? You mean they want to steal from me legally now? Pause. I can't comment on that, but I strongly encourage you to meet with us. It's in everyone's best interest. I lean back in my chair, gripping my phone tightly. You can tell my mother I'll see her in court. And I hang up. That night I get home to find a car already parked outside. Of course, I sigh. Walking up the steps. Before I even reach the door, it swings open. My mother stands there, arms crossed, her face tight with barely concealed anger. Gregory is behind her, arms folded like some kind of bodyguard. And Noah, he just stands there looking exhausted. What on earth is this, Mom? I ask. Stepping inside, she doesn't waste time. You've pushed this too far, Thomas. We tried to talk to you civilly, but you've left us no choice. I scoff. Oh, no choice but to sue me? Her jaw tightens. You're being ridiculous. We just want what's fair. Fair? I let out a cold laugh. You tried to steal my college fund and now you want to steal my inheritance? What's next, my bank account? Gregory steps forward, his voice patronizing. Now, son. I turn on him instantly. Don't call me son. He exhales through his nose, clearly irritated. The house is too much for you to handle alone. Be reasonable. We're family. No, I shoot back. Family doesn't do what you've done to me. Noah finally speaks. Thomas, man, just talk to us. You don't have to do this. I turn to him. His voice isn't aggressive, just tired, maybe even guilty. You don't get it, do you? I say. I've spent my whole life being walked over by this family. I'm done. You can stay in my house if you pay rent. My mother's face turns red. You are not going to charge us rent, Thomas. That is completely... Completely what? I interrupt. Unfair? Cruel? Unreasonable? Funny, because that's exactly how I've been treated for years. She inhales sharply, hands trembling with rage. We raised you! We gave you everything! My blood boils. You raised me? Dad raised me. And when he died, you stopped giving a damn. Her mouth opens, then shuts. For the first time, she has nothing to say. Gregory clears his throat, stepping forward again. If you refuse to work with us, we will fight this legally. I hold his gaze, completely unshaken. Go ahead, waste your money. The will is airtight. I checked. More silence. Noah shifts uncomfortably, his face tense. Then my mother does something that surprises even me. She begs, Thomas, please. Her voice cracks. You don't have to do this. We're your family. I stare at her. The same woman who had ignored me, belittled me, stolen from me. And now she wants my kindness. I take a deep breath, then step closer. You can stay, I say softly. If you pay, just like anyone else. Her face twists. You're heartless. I smile coldly. No, I just finally learned from you. And with that, I turn and walk upstairs. For the first time in my life, I'm in control, and I'm not giving it back. The silence in the house is different now. It isn't the usual indifference I grew up with. It's thick, charged, filled with barely contained resentment. For the first time, my mother, Gregory, and Noah realize I won't back down, and they hate it. First, they try ignoring me. For days, no one speaks to me unless absolutely necessary. My mother avoids me in the kitchen. Gregory locks himself in his office. And Noah, well, he mostly keeps his head down. Fine by me. But then the small inconveniences start. The Wi-Fi mysteriously stops working. Someone turns the heat down to nearly freezing at night. And my personal favorite, my laundry, which I left in the washing machine, is suddenly found dumped on the basement floor. Still wet. Petty. Predictable. Pathetic. I don't react. And that pisses them off even more. One evening, about a week after the confrontation, I come home late from work. to find Noah sitting on the porch steps. He looks up when I approach, rubbing his hands together against the cold. "What do you want?" I ask. Unlocking the door, he sighs. "Can we talk?" I hesitate for a moment, then walk inside, leaving the door open behind me. He follows. We sit at the kitchen table. Noah looks down at his hands. "This whole thing is a mess, man." I raise an eyebrow. "For you or for Mom and Gregory?" He sighs. "For everyone." I lean back, crossing my arms. "If you're here to convince me to back down, don't waste your time." He shakes his head. "I'm not, He hesitates. "I don't know, Thomas. I didn't ask for any of this. And yet you're benefiting from it." Noah winces. "I didn't know they were planning to take your college fund. I swear." I study him for a moment. I want to believe him. Maybe part of me even does. "But that doesn't change anything." "You still took it." He looks away. "I didn't have a choice." I scoff. "That's nonsense, and you know it." Noah exhales sharply. "I didn't want to be the favorite, Thomas. I didn't want this." I tilt my head. "Did you ever tell them that?" He falls silent. And that's all the answer I need. Finally, he speaks again. "You're really making them pay rent?" I nod. "Yeah." He lets out a small laugh, shaking his head. "They're losing their minds over it." I smirk. "Good." Noah looks up at me, something different in his expression. Maybe respect, maybe regret. I don't know how you put up with them for this long. I sigh. I don't either. For the first time in years, we sit in silence. Not awkward, not tense. Just two people who had been caught in the same toxic family, finally seeing it for what it was. Noah exhales. "I should go." I nod. "Yeah." He hesitates at the door. "I'm sorry, Thomas." I don't reply, and then he leaves. The next morning, my mother breaks. I'm making coffee when she storms into the kitchen, slamming a folder onto the counter. "This is insane!" Her voice is sharp, angry. "Charging your own mother rent. Do you even hear yourself?" I take a sip of my coffee, unfazed. I hear myself just fine. She jabs a finger at the papers. "We can't afford this." I raise an eyebrow. "Oh? Then how are you planning to afford this house if you want it?" She clenches her jaw. "That's different." I smile coldly. "No, it's really not." She lets out a shaky breath. "Switching tactics? Thomas, we're family. We're supposed to take care of each other." I tilt my head. "Like how you took care of me?" She flinches. "It's not the same." I lean forward. "It's exactly the same. You never cared when I was the one struggling. But now that you're the one paying the price, suddenly it's unfair." She stares at me, lips pressed tightly together. Then she does what she always does when she isn't winning. She plays the victim. "I just don't understand where I went wrong with you." Her voice cracks. Full of fake emotion. "I raised you better than this." I meet her gaze, steady and unyielding. "No, you raised me to be useful to you. And now that I'm not, you don't know what to do." Tears well up in her eyes. But I'm not falling for it. Not anymore. "You have two choices," I say. My voice calm. "You pay rent or you move out." "But you will not take from me, ever, again." She lets out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "You'll regret this, Thomas." I take another sip of my coffee. "No, I won't. And for the first time in my life, I mean it. The first rent payment is due on the 1st of the month. By the time the 31st rolls around, I know they won't pay." I sit in the living room, scrolling through my phone when I hear my mother's voice behind me. "Thomas, I don't look up. If you're here to beg for an extension, don't bother." She exhales sharply. "I just need more time." I finally look at her. "You've had time. You just didn't think I'd go through with it." Her lips press into a thin line. "You're really making your own family homeless over a stupid grudge?" I smirk. "No, I'm making my tenants pay rent. If you can't afford it, you move out." That's how the real world works. Her eyes flash with anger, but she holds it back. "Gregory and I are trying to figure something out. We just need a little flexibility." I lean back. "Gregory drives a brand new car. You go to the salon every month. You had money when you thought you'd get this house for free." She swallows hard. "This isn't fair?" "Oh," I tilt my head. "You thought it was fair when you tried to take my college fund?" Silence. I stand up, walking past her. "You have 24 hours. The next morning, I wake up to the sound of suitcases being dragged down the stairs. I don't bother checking, just sit at the kitchen table, drinking my coffee. Gregory storms in first, face red with frustration. You've really outdone yourself, kid. I smile over my cup, and yet I still own the house. He clenches his jaw. You'll regret this. I take a slow sip. Doubt it. He mutters something under his breath and walks out. Noah passes by next. Carrying his backpack, he hesitates in the doorway. Guess this is it. I nod. Guess so. He sighs. You know, I don't blame you. I raise an eyebrow, but he gives a weak smile. But I kind of wish things had turned out differently. I shrug. Me too. And then he leaves. My mother is the last one. She stands in the doorway, staring at me. I hope you're happy, she says. Voice cold. You destroyed this family. I meet her gaze. No, Mom, you did. She swallows hard, her face twisted between anger and something else. Something that almost looks like regret. But I don't care anymore. I watch as she picks up her bag and walks out. Without another word, the house is finally quiet. Not the uncomfortable silence I had grown up with. Not the forced politeness of people barely tolerating each other. Just peace. I exhale, letting the weight of it all sink in. For the first time in my life, I'm free, and it feels really good. Am I the asshole for making my mother and her family pay rent? Or was I just setting boundaries? It's been a couple of weeks since everything went down, and honestly, I don't know how to feel. Long story short, my mom and her husband tried to take my college fund, then tried to take my inheritance after my grandmother passed. I refused, made them pay rent to stay in my house, and when they didn't, I evicted them. Now I live alone. The house is peaceful, my finances are secure, and for the first time in years, I don't feel like I'm being used. But here's the thing, even though I know I was right, it still feels weird. The silence is different now. Not the kind I craved when they were constantly in my space. This one feels heavier, lonelier. There's no more tension, no more fights. Just me sitting in this big house with nothing but my thoughts. Did I go too far? Top comment 1. Dude, you did what you had to do? They were using you, plain and simple. If they really cared about you, they wouldn't have treated you like an ATM. Stay strong, my response. I appreciate that. Logically, I know I was justified. But emotions don't always work logically, you know? I don't miss the way they treated me, but I guess I miss having a family, even a shitty one. Top comment 2. You threw your own mother out on the street over money. Hope you enjoy your peace while she struggles. My response, she's not homeless. She moved in with Gregory's relatives. And let's be real, she had no issue trying to screw me over financially. But yeah, sometimes I wonder if I should have given her more time. Top comment 3. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. It's self-preservation. They took from you without remorse. But now you're supposed to feel bad? Nah, don't fall for it. My response. I hear you, I really do. And I don't regret standing up for myself. But does standing up for yourself have to mean standing alone? Top comment 4. Hey, it's me, Noah. I saw this post and I don't know. I get why you did it. But you're not the only one who lost a family that day. My response. Man, I don't even know what to say. I didn't think you'd see this. You were always caught in the middle. And maybe I didn't give you enough credit. If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me. I don't know if I'll ever fully stop questioning my decision. Maybe time will help. Maybe it won't. But for now, all I can do is move forward and figure out what comes next.